Hi, everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of the Sam Wise Yaboinski podcast, brought to you by the First Church in Belmont, Unitarian Universalist. I'm Chris.
And I am Samuel.
And we're so grateful to have you here. It is really exciting that the very first guest on the pod is our very own Ian Garvie, for so many reasons, not the least of which is that he's super fancy and understands the audio side of everything. But also, we just have had such a crazy year and a half. And of all of us, of all of the staff, who I'm so grateful for everybody opening and facing the transition and getting so creative. Really, Ian, more than any of us, Ian's job entirely changed. I mean, the whole point of what we get to do together in music was just utterly different and stripped away. So I'm so grateful, both beyond the pandemic and even before. So grateful to get to build this moment of the church with you, Ian, but then also having faced all this and now moving into this next phase. So anyway, we're so grateful that you're here. Welcome,
Ian.
Welcome.
Thank
officially.
you so much. I'm really glad to be part of this, and I'm excited to hear where this podcast goes and get to know more members of the community. It's going to be great.
Yeah, it is. And so we have a bunch of questions that we've have, some of which we'll share with lots of the guests. But also just like on our way to get to know everybody a little bit better. So one of them, which we had, was to sort of share about a teacher that you have had and anything that teacher's teachings have been resonating in this moment. So is there anybody in all the many teachers that you've had that comes to mind?
Oh, yeah, actually. So there is somebody that comes to mind specifically. It sort of goes back a little bit to when I was in grad school. So I went to grad school for orchestral conducting. I had studied conducting through undergrad and been a piano major and decided to focus on conducting. And going to grad school, there were a lot of teachers, for all of the sort of regular music disciplines that you would expect: composition and theory and conducting. And a couple of the teachers there were, I think you'd call them they were sort of old school style, sort of instill the fear of God into their students kind of teachers, where it was borderline, okay, actually scratch that, completely verbally abusive teaching at times. And, there were students who were absolutely in tears at times. But what's interesting is that was, so there was a whole learning process sort of with getting a thicker skin and being able to sort of hear what they were teaching and not the tone of voice or the manner in which it was taught. So that was a whole learning sort of side. But that's not actually the teacher that I sort of think of the most, because alongside that, there was a teacher that I worked with for ear training and musicianship skills, and he was also the choir director at the school. And what I saw in him, and what really sort of carries with me today, is his approach to conducting and to directing a group of people, because he directed the college choir. It was, a bunch of undergrads and some grad school students and all of that. His approach was so different. And what I learned at the hand of his teaching and his directing was there are a handful of different ways that anybody in a position of a director, at the time, it was a conductor because that's what I was studying, but it really expands to any directing sort of position where you're in charge of a group of people. Anyone in that position has a couple different ways that they can get the people that are working for them or that are contributing to their project to actually work for them, to participate. And one is to, in a professional conducting, field that happens regularly, you pay people enough to do it. And so then no matter how much, no matter how badly you treat them or no matter how much you yell at them and abuse them, which I did see, if you pay people enough, they'll work for you. So that's one option. Another is, especially when people don't have a choice, there's this inclination from a lot of people to like badger people into, and there's this sort of verbal berating people to work for them and to actually do what they want. But this choir teacher had a completely different approach, and he had a way of inspiring people to actually work for him and to give him what he wanted. And he was such a kind and friendly person and was so understanding when things went wrong, when people couldn't do something. And it was always so kind and gentle, the way he approached his teaching, that within minutes of working for him, you found sort of invariably people found themselves wanting to give him more and to do more and to, do the best they possibly could. And he ended up getting a better result and getting more people sort of committed to his vision as a conductor than anyone who I saw verbally berate people towards their vision. And he did it in such a gentle and kind way that I realized that, inspiring other people to work for you is also a road to the same result, having your director's vision happen. And that's really stayed with me for obvious reasons that, I direct a lot of different groups, and, here at the church, especially just with the various kids choirs and the musical and the adults choirs. And my hope is that on some level, I'm channeling that side of, and that teacher that I'm, as opposed to verbally berating people to sing for me or to do what I'm asking them to do. My hope is that there's a little bit of gentleness and kindness and inspiring people to do it as well. So that's the teacher who I would say I try to carry with me today.
Well, I'm interested you say that. I think that comes across from what I've seen of the way you interact with the kids in preparing for the musical and so on. I think that really comes across, that channeling that care and that compassion.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good to hear.
And one of the really fascinating things is, like you said, you're doing that with kids, but then also with many, many adults at the same time. And I've really appreciated watching you and Simon too, for it by extension. It's rare that folks can work so well with very, very small kids, middle school kids and adults all at the same time. And you both do such a good job, really kind of shifting between the different groups. And I think you hit on it. It's like being able to inspire and being able to connect and kind of bring that to everybody. It's been a real pleasure to see.
Thank you. And it's also, I think it also comes down to also seeing people rather than just a product that they can give you, which you do run into in a lot of professional music fields where, directors just see, this singer versus that singer. It doesn't matter. I just care what sound they bring. And it's looking past that and seeing the people.
Yeah.
So I think that's a real big part of it.
Yeah. And I mean, so that kind of comes to one of the second pieces was, so since so much of those mechanisms, so much of the way that we connect and go into that was just utterly different for the last year and a half, kind of what was that like for you, pivoting, but then also kind of, you ended up doing, I got to see a lot of it up close, but you ended up doing so much different work in the last year and a half. So how was that for you, and what did it sort of feel like and look like, and what have you been excited to get back to?
Oh, yeah. So Yeah, when we first canceled services sort of for the foreseeable future, it was a very immediate shift. Obviously, all music in person, had to stop. But the question became, how do we continue making music happen for these video services? And I think I was in the fortunate position in that I had always kind of been fascinated by recording technology, and I had some microphones. My, at the time, fiance, now wife, had done a number of professional recordings vocally, and she also had some recording equipment lying around the house. And the process of transitioning to engineering the recording, though, was really an experience of learning on the fly. I mean, I had set up some microphones and recorded piano, myself playing piano before, but the workflow of going from me sitting down and recording something, that's just one step. I can record myself at the piano, but then pulling everybody together and learning how to send out what other people needed to be able to record their part. And that was really an experience of learning on the fly and honestly getting it wrong a number of times. So the first large group recording that I tried to make was the Blue Boat Home with the senior choir, which was great.
Yeah,
but it was great. I remember that.
I was spending so much time. First I was also learning the video editing software as I went. So that took a long time, but learning sort of what the singers actually needed to be sent so that they could effectively set up recording equipment in their own house and record their part. So that was all learning on the fly. But the workflow sort of ends up being where Simon and I need to create what we call, a reference recording. And it's usually a recording of the accompaniment. Sometimes it would be Simon would record the accompaniment or I would record an accompaniment. And then I would record a video of myself conducting to that accompaniment, package those together, and send that video out so that then watching it, the members of the choir can actually sing to the accompaniment that they hear. And that way, if every individual person is singing to the same accompaniment, theoretically, it should all line up at the end. And so then they send videos of themselves singing, and I have to take all of those videos, edit the audio, match it all up, and line it up perfectly so that all of them sound like they're singing together. And even though everybody's listening to the same reference recording, you'd be surprised how much people's interpretation of, when to cut off notes, when to start, is different. Even though everyone can hear when the piano starts and when my gesture, if I send a video conducting, I'm trying to be as clear as possible. There are half-second delays, microsecond delays here and there that are actually really audible. Yeah. So the amount of fine tuning and stretching notes, it was kind of remarkable how much editing needs to happen for every individual track then.
So excited to get back in person. How has it been, having a couple choir rehearsals and singing with people in person?
Oh, it's been wonderful. It's been fantastic. It's not just being able to see people and, say hi and actually connect in real time, but nothing beats the sound of, singing together in person in real time and, making music in that parish hall. The acoustic in the parish hall is just lovely. And even with masks on and, so far we've had up to, I think, 15 people in this past weekend's, actually just yesterday's choir rehearsal. But nothing compares to that sound and being together in real time. And you can see it on everybody's faces too. It's just the relief at being back is just phenomenal. And I am looking forward to next week actually starting the children's choir rehearsals as well.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wait, the little people or the medium people?
No, the youth choir. Sorry. We'll be starting with the children's choirs for anyone 12 or over because we are requiring people to be vaccinated. Fingers crossed that soon the younger children will also be able to be vaccinated and we can start with all of the children's choir rehearsals soon. But for now, just for the youth choirs.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
wonderful.
and we mentioned it before, but like you're saying, just coming back to live music, it was amazing. The outdoor service, the next one's coming up soon, but the Vespers services, we've
I've
had
loved the Vesper services so far. They've
different
been
singers
wonderful.
at each one, but
Yeah.
just being in the sanctuary and being there and having music kind of like surround me, just sitting there and listening to the singer and listening to you and to Simon play. It's just been so restoring and really beautiful. There's just something to live music, that kind of conversation. I love music just in general, but I hadn't realized how much I had missed it until it was happening again. It was really beautiful.
Absolutely.
We'll keep doing those Vesper services.
To me, there's a kind of intimacy to that setting and that atmosphere of being in person in the sanctuary with that beautiful music, with the candles, and it's that's hard to do. That's hard to do with tech,
right? I don't know, impossible maybe. Yeah. It's like a whole different thing. Yeah.
So transitioning back to being in person and being able to go to these Vesper services, that's been a big thing for me as well. Even though I'm not, contributing to the music, I've really, really enjoyed that.
And I mean, not to take anything away from the tech, like it's incredible what it's made possible, and we'll continue to do some stuff. But, between the Vesper services and the big outdoor service, just seeing what it means to come back to that has been really wonderful.
Yeah, totally.
So, and even outside of a service context, we just yesterday after the choir rehearsal, we did that hymn sing on the front step out in the town green, and some 15 people showed up and we sang hymns together for 40 minutes, and it was just amazing. Looking at also the look on people's faces, just to be able to sit there and sing, this is our land, and sing. Come Sing a Song with Me, and all of these, favorite hymns that we took a bunch of requests for, and just being able to sing together makes such a difference for people.
And how often are you going to be doing that, the hymn sing?
So we'll be doing those once a month, while we can still meet outside. So they'll kind of be on, towards the middle end of the month, kind of opposite the in-person large services. So we'll be meeting for an in-person service just this coming weekend, October 3rd. And then we'll meet towards the end of October on the 24th, I think it is, will be our next hymn sing. And then November 7th will be an in-person service. And fingers crossed, if weather is good, sometime just before Thanksgiving, then we'll also do a hymn sing outside.
Perfect. So dear listener, stay tuned to all our wonderful emails to be able to time some of this. There's a lot going on. So one of the other things we're going to check in with folks about along the lines of, deepening our understanding and experience of Unitarian Universalism and the world was, many of we have 7 principles and 6 sources. So we're inviting each of our guests to share what of the sources or principles are particularly dear to their heart or resonant for this moment. So Ian, which one did you pick?
So it was actually a bit of a challenging choice because they're all great. I mean, I really do stand behind all of the principles, but the one that resonates with me the most is one of the 6 sources. And it kind of makes sense as an artist and musician. The direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life.
Ooh.
And what I love about that one is...
Wait, say it again even. Sorry to interrupt. Say it again. Just if people are hearing it for the first time.
There's a lot in there.
So good. The 6 sources,
So good.
Direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. And what I love about that one is it is so beautifully open to interpretation.
Yeah.
Everybody's experience of what they find to be their transcending mystery and wonder, what resonates to them as that piece which moves them to a renewal of their spirit, that's going to be different for everybody. And that's what I love about it. For me, at times, that's going to be music.
Right.
You know, and that's going to be the experience of sitting in a major music service while the orchestra, you know, is playing and the choir is singing. And sometimes I'm just moved to this profound experience of, holy moly, this is what I get to do. And it's just so moving and so powerful. And sometimes it's, you know, sitting at home in a recording of a particularly beautiful piano piece or something like that. And sometimes that can move me to it. But it's that so often there's an intersection of what I do professionally and what I need to do, you know, what I'm doing for the church, and that experience of a mystery and a wonder. And I guess it's small wonder then why I actually went into music professionally, because I do find that as, you know, that is often where I experience mystery and wonder. But what I also love is taking a step back from my own experience and recognizing that other people's experience is going to be different and just as valid. And other people may experience that in nature or in, you know, community or communing with other people, or you name it. And that's no less valid and no less wonderful. And I just love that open-ended nature of that particular one.
Yeah, and a huge fan of that one too. And I love especially the direct experience, because that's kind of historically one of the really cool things I think about Unitarian Universalism and a lot of other traditions too. But we came about because people really were starting to value the direct experience, like an individual person's experience of truth, because not long ago, historically, people were come to churches to have sort of a mediated experience of truth. Like people would wait for the clergy to tell them what is true, or they'd wait for the people who they've said, yes, you have the power over me. And instead, we're saying that each and every one of us has this kind of a valuable take on what is true. And that then, you know, together we create something bigger and wider and, you know,
but at the same time, for me, it's interesting that, you know, this idea of direct experience, that means my direct experience, the direct experience of the individual person. But this idea of, you know, forces which create and uphold life. I mean, life can mean human life. It can mean my life. It can mean all of animal life. But it can also mean the sense of life as in our social life, the life of our congregation, the life of our community, collective life, our being together, our stitchedness together as a community. And upholding those things is something which, you know, art forms like music and our worship services, life is something larger than just me, and I like the way in which this source kind of links my experience with something which is potentially larger than just me.
Yeah, so
absolutely
good. That's fantastic. Well, you're amazing, and it has been
Thank you,
truly one of the great joys of my ministry is getting to work with this whole staff team, but really especially you. I remember in the very beginning when we started working together, I came to my wife and I said, oh my goodness, I don't think I've ever worked with anybody who matches my motor. You know, I think that you are an incredibly hard worker, and you bring all of the other gentleness and wisdom and all of this beautiful music that you bring with people and the kind of nurturing teaching that you do. But you also just work so hard, man. And I'm really, really grateful to everything that you've brought and everything that we, you know, get to build together over the next many years. With
also, I want our listeners to know, like, just how much we like working together. This is so much fun. This is awesome.
It really is. It really is. And to be fair, Chris, you started in September, and really, you know, over the summer, we started to have some conversations and get to know each other. And that was also gearing up for the musical, because before the pandemic, we had our usual musical season. And that is when I need to just every year, it was, you know, that's when I just have to shift into overdrive. Right. And September through November is just a mad sprint. And you know, so you were getting to know me also in the craziest time of the year. But I do remember, and it is honestly one of my cherished memories of getting to know you. And it was after the December major music service when we had just performed Bach's Christmas Oratorio.
Yeah.
And, the sanctuary was packed with 250 people plus the orchestra. And there were people standing in the annex area outside your office and in the aisles and everything like that. And after the service, you came up to me and you were shaking my hand and you said, from the beginning, you told me the major music, service was big, but I had no idea how big.
Yeah.
And there was just this moment of actually seeing it and realizing, and I was just like, yeah, that's part of what this place is about.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was beautiful. It was really great. So the other thing, we keep a little bit of time. If you have any questions for either Sam or I.
Uh-oh.
Well, yeah, I was kind of curious, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, Chris, for, your first year as our minister took such a hard left-hand turn because of COVID. And, we're still slowly making our way back to some semblance of what you might have expected coming into, your first year as minister in a new community and a new church. And I'm kind of curious to hear from you. How has your vision of ministry and sort of where the church is going to go and how has that shifted from where you were coming in as a new minister here versus having navigated us through extremely well, I might add. I mean, I cannot imagine having gone through this with another leader. You've held us together incredibly well. But how has your vision of sort of the ministry and direction of the church shifted thanks to the last year and a half?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, yeah, I think ministry and congregational growth and transformation and congregational deepening is always a conversation. It's a conversation between minister and the entire staff team, and then all of our leadership and the wider community. And so I think it's really different. What I thought we were going to be building when you all called me, I don't know, this is my third year, which is hard to believe even, where, what we thought we were building is really different than what we're building now. I was just talking with somebody earlier today, and you remember early on, we were talking about how could we expand the physical building and all of these things looking way down the line. And I think right now it's, that's the last thing in the world that I think we're thinking of, because there's so many creative ways to meet the mission that we have. These outdoor services, those were amazing. Those could scale up. There's so many things that we can do. So I think to me, there's so many interesting possibilities. And I think in the pandemic, I've returned to over and over again that it's also always the same, It's like people want to come together, people want to connect, people want to support each other, hold each other in love, people want to work for the transformation of the world, and that's going to always be the same. So I think we've remembered kind of the core of who we are, and now lots of the containers are really different, and we can be creative in ways that we hadn't thought of being creative, and certainly our tech footprint and our tech possibilities are just wide open in ways we never thought. I mean, Ilsa Caprellian, who's just an absolute treasure and amazing. She just turned 90. She was on Zoom meetings the other day. She figured it out and she wanted to get onto Zoom. And so some people went over and helped her set it up. And I think our technical possibilities are just wide open. So I think it's been, it's definitely still the same in so many ways. And I think, certainly so much has changed. I think the biggest thing, when we had that service outside on September 12th, I've never, ever appreciated so much what it means to have live worship together with people than when we hadn't been physically in the same place together for that long. Yeah. And I've always loved worship. I've always loved every part of worship, but seeing it all come together again and seeing people see each other and seeing, kids scampering around and, it was so precious. And so I think, probably the biggest thing is I'm just savoring it differently now than I was however many years ago. But yeah, no, that's a super interesting question. What about you guys? I think the same question. It's like, what do you think is possible now, having been through this time and coming back together? Has it sort of shifted what you think is possible at First Church?
I think for me, yeah, I would agree with what you said about tech opening up, new possibilities. I think, 2 years ago, none of us would have seriously considered a viable sort of platform that we could have meaningful services and music, as YouTube. The just videos up on YouTube did not seem like a very church thing to do. And I wouldn't have really seriously considered it. And now it's, having gone through a stretch of time where that's our only option, now it's become so clear that is such a viable option, and that having this online presence and being able to connect with people from across the world and, the country and across time zones and whatever is really important and is really valuable. So I think that, while a lot of what I do, I think, is going to return to the way it was before, because really in-person music is something that really can't be replaced, but it can certainly be supplemented with this online, sort of experience and worship possibilities for people who aren't able to be here in person. And I think that really, it's important to be continuing that. And I really do think that 2 years ago, I would have laughed that idea off. But it's proven really valuable.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Sam,
what about you?
Well, I think the thing that I found myself thinking about a lot is that a lot of people are looking for, the experience of the sacred, and that means that's related to the idea of authenticity, and they're looking for something real and authentic, and that doesn't have to be just in person. There's something irreplaceable about the in-person worship experience, about the in-person, chalice circle or small group ministry, the in-person community. But something that I'm going to continue thinking through is how we recreate those things online, through our podcast, through our social media, through our Zoom, through our various channels. How we create this kind of authenticity that people are hungering for, and which brings them to Unitarian Universalism. So the combination of kind of what we call digital ministry and in-person ministry, finding the right balance that leads people away from the chaos of the world and the chaos of tech. A lot of the time we're so besieged by images and sounds, and sometimes we just want somewhere quiet. We want somewhere meditative. We want a place that's a place apart. And
yeah. And aside from the digital side, I also want to throw in the Vespers services that we have, these small sort of limited audience that we're doing a couple times a week now. Again, that's something that has sort of arisen out of necessity, but I love them. And I think this opportunity for this small, intimate, quieter, meditative, candlelit service is something that I would love to see continue as well.
Yeah, me
too. Eventually it'll be something that we can have 150 or 200 people there. If that's how many people want to show up, that would be fine. But I would love to see a sort of midweek 6:30 in the evening candlelit service continue for the certainly as long as I'm there at the church, because I think it's such a beautiful worship opportunity.
Yeah,
totally agree.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much. This was a great way to kick this all off, and you're amazing, and we're so grateful to.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, this was awesome. And
thank you both for having me on. This is I really welcome the opportunity, and I look forward to seeing where this podcast goes and who else we get a chance to get to know. This is going to be great.
Yeah, you're just going to have you back every week. Oh, no, but before you go, anything to plug, stuff that's coming up or people should know about?
So the biggest things are children's music programs started. As I mentioned earlier, it's not all of the children's music or not all the children's choirs yet, but Youth choir is going to be starting soon. Children's choir, all the way down to age 5, as soon as we can get, everybody vaccinated. So fingers crossed that comes up soon. The plan at this point is still to start the musical in January. So we will be doing our usual, First Church musical on stage in the parish hall, just performances at the end of March, the weekend that's at the end of March and beginning of April. That's something to look forward to. And if anyone, the adult choirs are also looking for members. We have had a number of people that over the pandemic have moved away, and it would be wonderful to get some new faces and new singers involved. So if anyone listening has wanted to sing in choirs, has sung in choirs before, there is room in both of the adult choirs. We've got the Nova Choir, which is an unauditioned group for anyone, regardless of skill level or experience. If you've never sung a note in your life and always wanted to, then, you're welcome. And then there's also the Senior Choir, which is for people who have some experience and is by relatively informal and low pressure audition or conversation with me. But yeah, we are welcoming singers of all ages, and it would be really nice to sort of rejuvenate and grow those ensembles now that the pandemic is over and we can sing together. So that, I think, is the biggest thing.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, and we'll be packaging this up and taking out strange noises and sending this along, and then hopefully doing it again in, say, a week or so. We'll see where this all goes. But whoever has made it this far, thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Sam, and thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Ian.
This is a great beginning.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.